to get started. We also haven't practiced this, so that's also scrappy. But so scrappiness is like making the most of the limited resources, to get the best outcome.
Yeah.
So that's scrappy. I think I saw it on LinkedIn. It's like I'm a doom scroller on LinkedIn. So for you guys, it's like thinking about like what your resources are. For a lot of the time, is money, and figuring out how to use that most effectively. And we can kind of talk a bit about that in a bit. And we have a startup coming in, or a special guest.
Yeah.
We can talk a bit more about that. But that's scrappy.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard of scrappiness before? Like the word thrown around? Yeah. Okay. Some of you might not have. I didn't know what it was coming in, so I had to kind of search it up.
So the playbook for this, I don't know if you guys have read any of Paul Graham's work, but he's the guy that started Y Combinator. So he has a bunch of essays that he puts out every time basically he feels like it. And one of the ones that really struck a nerve with a lot of the startup community was called Do Things That Don't Scale. And the basic premise is that like there is the single best thing that you can do for a startup is as quickly as you can find customers that really care about the pain that you have. And the only way to do that is to just get out there and start doing it as fast as you can. And so he provides a bunch of examples in this. So the biggest one that I really like is about Airbnb. So Airbnb was going to fail like 20 different times. There were so many points in time where Airbnb was ready to fail, and they just kept pushing, and they kept finding new ways to develop the product to make sure that customers and users could engage with it and really find a way to make it work. So some of the crazy things that they did is when they realized that the only way that you would buy or rent out a space, there you can go to the next slide.
Show you the next one.
Yeah. The only way you could rent out a space was if you had photos. They would go door to door, knock on people's doors, and be like, "Hey, we're doing the startup. Would you love to be a user? Let's come in. We'll take some photos." And they would literally go door to all throughout New York City and just try to find places that worked. Another one that I really like is that. So I think we talked about this last time. But Airbnb used to be like a pop-up center where conventions were. So one of the ones that they did was the Democratic Convention. What happened is they had run out of money. That they had, I think it was like a week or 2 weeks worth of runway left, and they were like, we have to just find something that makes us money. And so when the DNC came in, they started selling views. Have nothing to do with the product, but it was a way for them to keep afloat and stay engaged. That they were lucky to make it work. So
yeah. And even I'm trying to think of another example. Like my roommate, for full context, had like a fun around YC interview, but there's obviously one round. He did a startup back in high school, and he was making an NFT marketplace. So if you were checking out of a store, he embedded in the checkout an NFT receipt which tagged the item, so it had like a unique identifier. But he had like a supply problem, and so no one came on his side with listing. So he kind of illegally scraped all of the product listings, which was like in his target customer, added them all to the site. And so when people would come onto his site, they would go and check out. They wouldn't go and check out, but they'd view the page which the product was on. Daniel would combine all of those views, text the person who he stole the listing from, and say, 200 people have viewed your product. Do you want to pay us a tiny bit of money to show it at the front page? I think he got $50,000 from that. So being scrappy is a way to Daniel had no money, so that's how he got the listings and then the first revenue. I guess it's earlier.
I mean, the basic idea is just be ruthless, absolutely ruthless with what you're doing, because there's so many things that if you don't try it, you'll never know whether or not you could do it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a great example of this.
I don't like talking about myself, but I was kind of thinking about what to talk about for this. I did a business in high school, a startup, kind of like CPG. Do you guys know mechanical keyboards at all? Anyone super fans know it a lot? No. Okay, I can give a tiny overview. So, you might think of mechanical keyboards as gaming keyboards. I was a gamer. I played a lot of CS:GO, but I bought keyboards, which are very expensive, adult Lego basically. So, you'd buy a case for $200. You'd buy the keycaps, which are literally just so these plastic things with different colors. Each of those, a full set of them, cost $200. And so you basically buy this case, you buy the like key switches which make clicky sounds, you solder them on the power unit, like the power board, and you basically assemble it. It's crazy, like it's actually kind of insane. But the TLDR is like, I was super into it, but they cost a lot of money, okay? So I kind of wanted to like start a business. So I started, it was called GM Polo. This is actually like this is when it finally shipped and got released. It sold about like 5,000 sets globally. Actually, my roommate in high school, Daniel, he bought one of my products before I met him, which is insane. So that's such a to preface to say like, I'll show you why, like how I got there with like zero money. But yeah, I like wanted my own keycap set because I was like, you know what? Like I'm super into keyboards. I don't have $200 to spend on this plastic keycap set, and I wanted my own design, something that looked cool. So I had no money, is the short story. So like a normal CPG company, when I was making this, I was drinking a cold brew, and that was the cold brew I was drinking. If you think about like the costs that go into that to start it off the ground, or like if you're thinking about your own startups, there's like upfront capital that you need, right? They needed to pay someone to design that. They needed someone to buy like an aluminum can manufacturer to buy stuff from. They needed advertising costs to be able to ship it out. They needed some kind of licensing agreement with Metropolis. There's all these like tiny costs that are embedded in something like this. And so you kind of need to raise capital, right? I didn't have any capital. I was like 15 years old, and I was kind of broke. So yeah, I guess the scrappiness for me was, I kind of think about it like 7 different ways. This is also super like put together randomly, so I'm happy to answer questions. So kind of like 7 steps for me. The problem is with keyboards, since it's a physical product, I didn't want to either take a loan out and buy a bunch of plastic, pay the manufacturer, get them shipped all across the world. So I wanted to like render it myself. So I wanted to like make people think that the product was there, then collect all their capital and then use it to pay like the manufacturer and then like the distributor, and then eventually get it to the end customer. So I first like learned rendering. I didn't know how to render before. So I don't know, I'll go to the next slide, but these aren't real, right? But the top right one kind of looks a bit real, right? So you have to, like the scrappiness here was trying to figure out how to make it look as real as possible so that I could submit it to customers and say like, hey, like would you buy something like this? I paid a designer for the bottom one. I reached out to some random guy on Reddit who was some artist. And I was like, hey, I'll give you like $50 if you make me a design. Probably extortion. But he came out with this, and that sold like 3,000 unique products at like $20 each. So be scrappy and like learn stuff that you otherwise would have paid someone else to do. Like for rendering, that's like learning Fusion 360. Maybe for you guys, it's like learning how to use some web app that is like no code to deploy your first product. So try and do that. Also know when you can outsource. Like if it's $30 to pay someone to do an artwork, which can return a lot of money, that's an easy pathway. Okay, and then second is like validating a product, right? Like I didn't want to go and release it and say, release it, it'd be a bad design and people hate it, right? And never purchase it. So you should never really use forms. I kind of used forms. That's like 500 responses. So I posted something called like an interest check where I was like, hey, would you like, basically like, is this an appealing design or something you pay for? So I used like the renderings from the first slide, basically, posted it to this very niche subreddit called mechanical keyboards and was like, would you buy it? 1,000 people upvoted, 500 responded. And through that, I got like customer feedback. So these are basically people saying like, this is like keyboard talk for like the unit size. It's very niche. These are like specific novelties which you can add to keycaps. And so I kind of took all that feedback and refined it. Go.
Is there, besides Reddit, is there another channel or
Yeah.
channels you recommend to people?
Yeah, I mean, like, because the whole thing is you should try and find your niche, right? You'll know the niche better than I do. It's like the community you're building for. For me, the niche was like mechanical keyboards. There's also like Geek Hack, which is this mechanical keyboards forum. There's Cube Talk. It's very nerdy, I promise. But like maybe for coding, it's like you're going to like a coding Reddit, or you're going to some like forum online where people are vibe coding or something, and you say like, would you use this or test it out? So try and find, and this will come to the point maybe later, but try and find like a very unique customer you can try and sell to or get feedback from. So yeah, for me it was kind of this. Yeah. So I didn't have any money, as I was saying before. The vendors, actually I'll go to this slide. This is better. Also, so apologies. So sorry. This is a world map.
Oh, is it?
This is Scrappiness. So this is a world map. This was me in Australia. I know it doesn't look like Australia at all. That's me in Australia. I wanted to onboard vendors. So the way the supply chain would work is that, so like usually if you're thinking about like, I don't know, this, not the projector. If you think about the coffee can I was showing, maybe there's like a manufacturer in China who sends it to like Metropolis in like North America, then they distribute. Usually you have to pay the manufacturer up front. You have to pay the distributor up front, then you have to ship them to customers. I had this all set up before even taking on capital, before even like getting revenue. So I was here in Australia. I had like a vendor in Australia, vendor in Southeast Asia. Germany is the manufacturer, China's the manufacturer. I know it doesn't really look like the right geography. This was the UK, this is Canada and North America. So there was 5 distinct vendors globally, and 2 manufacturers. But I basically used this information and these upvotes and the interests here to convince the vendors to basically say, hey, I think we can do a group buy where this amount of people I think will buy this set. And at the time I thought it was like 250 or 300. And I was like, you know what? I'll onboard you. We'll make an agreement, like a seller agreement. You give me a fee after we've sold it, for the promise that you'll list my product on your site. And I also didn't want to use Kickstarter, because Kickstarter takes like a big fee. So I basically made my distributed Kickstarter through all these different vendors. So that's, again, the kind of distribution. Also, keep in mind, so I should have done it a bit better. These dotted lines are like shipping routes, okay? So the German manufacturer, so I'd contracted a logistics company in Germany to ship it. So this is before it got released. I contracted a shipping company in Germany to ship it to North America, to ship it to Australia, to ship it to here. Actually, it was through here. And then China would also ship it across. Because this German manufacturer would make the plastic keycaps, and the Chinese manufacturer would make these rubber mats, okay? So that's just like a bit of framing and context. It's kind of crazy. It's so weird. Okay, so then after I did that, I leveraged like organic marketing. That's like an obviously very fluffy term. But I was still not convinced. So I tried to convince the vendors that I had like a lot of conviction in myself and that I thought it would do really well. I actually didn't really have conviction that it would sell. So I was like, you know what, let me just market it with zero spend. So I use communities like this and this and this. That's what I was talking about. This is Keep Talk. This is Geek Hack. That's Mechanical Keyboard subreddit. 160,000 views. This had like 3K. I also had an Instagram. So you can try and like organically market it so you don't have to spend like a shit ton of money to validate the interest. So that was the TLDR of that. Yeah. So I guess the short story is like it kind of worked out well for me, but it worked out I think because I was scrappy upon reflection.
Yeah.
I didn't want to use my own capital. I didn't want to pay some manufacturing guy before I even had their products onboarded. And so I set up this supply chain ahead of time, had all the agreements signed beforehand, so that when it finally sold and went through this network, it was already set up. And so by the end, I don't know what the ratio of like money in to money out was, but like the money out dwarfed the money in, which is the TLDR. So yeah, I guess that's kind of like scrappiness and how you can get a startup off the ground. It's not really a startup, but like a business off the ground through spending not much money. So it comes back to that point about like making the most of the limited resources you have at hand as you get your company off the ground. So yeah, that was kind of my learnings. We'll go forward a bit though. Okay. Well, I haven't thought this through properly. But yeah, I think if you guys can partner up, maybe make a group of 3, or like we can make a group of 2 as well. You guys all have your startup ideas that you came in with. One of you guys will pitch your startup to the other person. Try and give like a 30-second elevator pitch, 60-second elevator pitch. And then let the other person try and think of ways to be scrappy. And maybe the best way to think about this is like getting it off the ground from like 0 to 1. Like what like go to market. Think about like go to market. Think about like onboarding customers. Think about marketing. Like if you're a product, try and think about like ways to be scrappy, like intuitive ways or counterintuitive ways. It's a better way of thinking about it. And then we'll give that like 10 minutes. These guys are coming in now. I owe you, bro. We'll come to him in a sec. Think of ways to be scrappy. So partner up. One person be brave and pitch, the other person listen, and give feedback on how to be scrappy. And then we'll switch it as well after like 2 or 3 minutes.
Sound good?
Yeah, let's pair up. I'll pitch down.
Just that sweetness that makes my heart. Just that sweetness that makes my heart. Oh, that sweetness that in your heart. Just that sweetness that makes me try. Friends all tell me that it looks so sad. They don't need to ask me why. Another reason that I feel so bad. Since the night you said goodbye. It's not the letter that you just don't write. It's not the arms of some new friend. It's not the crying in the dead of night that keeps me hanging on, waiting for you. Just that sweetness that makes me want. Just that sweetness that makes me want. Oh, that sweetness that in your heart. Just that sweetness that makes me try. I watch the street, I watch the radio. I don't need to turn it on. Another friend comes by and tries to say hello. Another weekend's almost gone. It's not the letters that you just don't write. It's not the arms of some new friend. It's not the crying in the dead of the night that keeps me hanging on, just waiting for you. It's that sweet mystery that's in your heart. It's just that sweet mystery that's in your heart. Oh, that sweet mystery that's in your heart. It's just that sweet mystery makes me try. That sweet mystery that's in your heart. It's just that sweet mystery makes me cry. Oh, that sweet mystery that's in your heart. It's just that sweet mystery makes me try. Sweet mystery, sweet mystery,
shining through, where the sun comes 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 shining.
Perfect. All right, guys, you're seeing a live deck. All right, guys.
Eric, can you send him the new one?
Oh, yeah.
10 seconds.
Oh, is it?
I got it. I'll send
All
it.
right, guys. This is very scrappy. Context. Just being shitty.
Dude, this is funny.
Oh my god.
Yeah, let's keep it by that. So these, they're from Perspective Health. You want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Nick. I was a veteran UChicago student who recently took leave to build full time after getting funding.
Yeah.
I was a second year.
And I'm technically a fourth year, but I'm not taking any classes. Also, just doing this full time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know we met like a year ago or something. It might be less than a year ago. They are now, for full context, doing a startup. So they dropped out. Dropped out. Leave of absence, everything.
You can take leave for 2 years.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
And now they're building a startup. You comfortable telling how much you raised?
Yeah. We raised $400K out of 4 million posts. And the pitch deck you're about to see is us figuring out how to raise. We're going into our seed round, like now basically, or at least prepping for it. So this is our first prep materials.
Yeah.
So I finished last night. We were working till like 1 a.m. on it yesterday. So
Yeah.
from like nothing.
Yeah.
So
Because you're still trying to raise kind of.
Well, we
were-
like just started the process basically yesterday.
It was
deciding to raise more.
Yeah, we had been asking around, trying to figure out what metrics. Probably like, I think that's the interesting thing is we're trying to figure out what metrics are needed to actually raise the next round and figure out how much money we could get at what valuation. So we spent like weeks asking people on the side until we figured we were kind of near ready to do it now.
Yeah. Okay, so this lesson is on scrappiness, right?
Wait, so you want us to
Okay,
focus
yeah.
on like the scrappiest things we've done?
Yeah, and I mean also like, by the way, if anyone has questions for them,
Yeah.
Let's talk
definitely,
about
like,
raising that. That was kind of scrappy.
Yeah. So let's do raising actually first. Oh, actually, so first let's give context maybe on like the product too. So
Yeah.
We can context on the story.
Yeah. Do the story.
let's do story first. So how did it start?
It's called Scrappiness.
Oh, okay.
It's on the projector side.
It'll take a second.
Okay.
Okay, so I went into I was like, where do I start? Okay, I was in the Army as a medic, and I realized that I really liked to do like tangible good, and I liked medicine stuff. So I got out of the Army to be pre-med. I like did the 2-year community college in 1 year and transferred here. And then I really wanted to get involved into like heavy like pre-med extracurriculars because I think a lot of us are like, how do we get into Harvard? I don't know. That's how I was. I was like, how do I get into Harvard next? And I was just like trying to like accelerate with like doing real projects because most people that get into Harvard like have done like real stuff, not just like academic stuff from what I read. But when I went to look for like ECs, I was like, what is like that? If I'm going to spend my time doing this, what's like the actual most fun thing I can do? And I also really care about doing like objective good. And that's kind of how I met Ishaan. So Ishaan was running a student organization. You can talk about it.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I started an organization, like an RSO on campus called the UChicago Harm Reduction Project, which I wasn't super experienced with beforehand, but I just wanted to do something that I thought could do, like Nick said, like tangible good and like siphon off resources from the university to like stuff that mattered. And at the time, there was a new program like that the state was doing to have like community-based naloxone distribution, and I was like, this sounds like an easy way to like save lives. So created this student organization, registered with the state to become like an official naloxone distributor, started going around the city distributing it. We started like partnering with churches and bars and stuff like that to have boxes so naloxone was available.
And what does naloxone do?
It's Narcan, so it's like the injectable thing that prevents or like reverses an overdose. So it stops overdoses, and if it's available next to someone who's overdosing, then they don't die, or they're much less likely to die. So that was the first project, just because it seemed like something like very tangible. I met Nick. We started working on stuff together. We coordinated these like street outreach programs where we partnered with a local recovery center, and we'd come and bring a mixture of students and clinicians to go out onto the street, and we'd give people free rides to treatment, and we'd also bring like food and coffee and stuff. From there, we were just looking for the next thing to do and do something even more impactful in a cause that's even more neglected. So
I think we were just like infinitely trying to scale how much impact we could do because it like seemed fun. It became like addictive. It was like, oh, like once you start doing things, you're like, yeah, like instead of being addicted to drugs, this is what I was going to choose.
To be addicted to solving drugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You could just use the addiction against the addiction itself.
I guess you could.
So then I guess reframing it like from that, how did you go from like the idea to not where you are now, but like in a point where you could start raising, and then we can start talking about raising.
Yeah, so I'll accelerate the story a little bit. We ended up going to like Appalachia, like an area where the opioid epidemic had like dishomed people, and we raised like internal funding and did a bunch of like not a bunch, but we did like a startup impact competition here. We started to like just like gain skills by like doing this stuff, and we ended up like successfully rehoming people.
Yeah.
And
was there a product then?
no, there was no.
This is just
This is
this is
us
like
just
no
doing
product.
stuff.
Yeah,
But it was gaining skills on how to like do things. For
and
nothing.
enough things under our belt that
Yeah.
like investors would trust us as people
That's-
who like
yeah.
know the issue and the problem and like have successfully done something before and aren't
Yeah.
just like
Which-
kids that
which-
like
yeah.
don't know what they're doing.
Which I think what I was trying to say is like the point is we had done something successfully. It didn't seem to matter like what it was, but it was like helpful that it was related.
Yeah.
I agree.
So then
From there, I guess, like, so you got, I remember you had like grant funding, you'd like done some competitions, you'd worked in the White House, you'd done, you gone to Appalachia, whatever.
Yeah.
From there, like,
He sent me a startup competition. That was the next step.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it'd be
yeah.
interesting to hear why he thought to send this startup competition.
well, you were just like always talking about startups. So I
Yeah.
was like, you probably really look into this shit.
Yeah. I was obsessed with infinitely scaling something from here.
So
The
then
idea that you could turn like something on paper into something that like transforms like we were doing. Like
So
a bunch of people.
I didn't take it too seriously at first. I was like, this seems like it'd be fun. I sent it to Nick. He was like, we have to do this. I was like, okay, sure.
I was sitting in the car one day with them and like our close friends, and I was like, guys, we could like do a startup.
We're like, okay. Yeah, sure.
So I think they like ran across a startup competition and sent it, and that's like really how it started.
And then Nick was working in a clinic at the time, and he was doing administrative work. And this is kind of the problem that we're focused on.
Yeah.
So our initial idea was actually and the idea we won. It was a startup competition for the National Institute of Drug Abuse. The one that we won with is different than the one that we ended up going with. The one that we won with was an idea to use machine learning to like find the most effective treatments for an individual given all this information that is collected upon their intake. It turns out it's really hard to build and hard to monetize, and also not what clinicians kind of cared about. I mean, they do care about the patients, but they also like getting the patients the right treatment. But they also, that's not the biggest bottleneck in giving the right care, getting the right care. It's like not just matching patients to the right treatment, but making sure that they can get treatment in the first place and making sure there's capacity, like beds and like, you know, enough clinicians. And if you walk into one of these substance use centers and like work there for a little bit, one of the things that you quickly find is that there's like tons of just like bullshit administrative tasks that you're forced to do that like really make your life like difficult. And so talking to clinicians and bringing in some of our friends who we like looped into this, we kind of came up with a new idea to like potentially help these centers like operate more efficiently, see more patients, and like have clinicians that are happier.
He's mugging, bro.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like a survival practice, man.
Thanks, bro.
We can get into what the actual product is now. I guess that probably makes it a lot easier to understand. But
I want to tell the story for the raise because I think it would have been helpful for me.
Maybe like reframing too. So I think you guys get an idea on like what the product is, how they started it. I guess
It's AI clinical notes. I mean,
Yeah.
meaning like we think once our product is fully done, it's going to be capable of automating about 90. The goal, the ambitious goal, is 95% of documentation for centers that currently can't access AI.
Yeah. So
No
When-
more like
yeah, it's a sick problem and like an actual good like feel good solution.
Yeah.
So how did the fundraising process start? Like what was like the timeline?
we like
of that?
totally messed up a lot.
Yeah, a ton. But so it started the startup competition. They sent it to me. We worked on it together. I ended up like winning the initial part, and I didn't think they were serious yet. So I remember they came over to like work and we were like grinding on the startup competition proposal, and I was like, would you guys be down to reinvest this money into the company? And they were both like, yeah, like if we can build something for real. So from there, I think the game was how do we raise the money to accomplish this as quick as possible. And what we realized is once we won that competition, the main thing that it gave us was like credibility. So we took that credibility and we like said that we had won this competition, talked to as many clinicians as we could to like try and validate that it was
Then the
possible.
next people we raised
And
from
then
was Dorman Fund.
Yeah, no, it was
or not Dorman Fund, LTF, sorry.
and once we figured that it was going to be possible to build it, we were like, okay, we have a UChicago. That's the best network we got. How do we use UChicago to raise money?
Because I was gonna say, did you say you had UChicago backing? I remember. seeing
Kinda.
that.
Not yet, but we did later. After
Once we got
from you
LTF.
guys.
So the thing that we were trying to
You
do
gave us that positional level.
was like get kind of higher and higher credibility wise. So we had our stories and the things that we'd like worked on in the past, and that like gave us some degree of credibility that like we were competent. And then we got this NIDA competition, and we had that, and then we pitch to LTF and we could say we won that.
LTF is not that credible.
But like people don't know.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
asked if I was allowed to do it with the Polsky Center, and they're like, well, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, allowed to say.
It's valid because like you make the most out of the limited resources. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
No, but I want to get into the specifics of this. But
Yeah.
because, okay, so for me, what happened was we did that, and then we were like, okay, we have UChicago resource. I know there's founders there, and I know there's resources in place. There has to be to like help us do this. So we went like asking everybody we knew who was building and like doing LinkedIn until we found people, and started asking them questions. And one of my friends recommended Chris at LTF would help us a bunch. So I like talked to Chris. I didn't know what you guys did yet, but I was like, help, like startups, let's do it.
Yeah, I remember meeting them in like a
Yeah.
plein air.
Yeah. You were in for
fuck,
it? Yeah.
sorry.
It was, and then we like went up the progression of like they require like 4 meetings and what your process is now. But we realized it was a game, and then we realized that everything's a game, which means that like who are these people and what leverage do they have? And I read every single one of your backgrounds, and I saw that you had connections to funds. And I was like, oh, so people on campus have connections to funds, which means they know information about how to get funding from those funds. So I should definitely go through this process. And then I should try and extract that information, essentially. But, like, obviously make friends. But I was, like, obsessed at the time. Yeah. So,
What did your product look like when you were just first starting?
Well, dude, we had
no
no
front
product.
end.
And how were you talking about that?
We had-
we had no
I
product.
remember when you pitched it. I don't think you had a product, did you?
No.
We had like not like the like first like 2 lines of code for it. So we had like the speech model I think done, and then like
No, it had nothing. It didn't start to get built until after
when we raised, we had
No, it was Techstars when it
Oh,
started
yeah,
to even.
yeah.
But when we got rejected from Techstars, when I talked to them, we sat down, we were all like heated, and I was like, are you gonna tell me that these people can build it and we can't? And everyone, no, like the 3 of us, me, him, and Jesse. No. But then we like decided like right there we were gonna actually do it. So it wasn't, and then Jesse started working on it, and then like everything started to like actually come together with the product. Yeah.
Maybe a good point because it's like scrappiness and like a thing that everyone here can pick up on, and like myself too.
Yeah.
Like how are you scrappy in like the conversations you had with people, or like getting your foot in the door?
Oh, jeez.
Especially with raising, right? Like,
With raising, okay.
or even outside.
start
of it.
running up credit card debt.
You guys were the most helpful. You made it like decently easy mode, honestly. Colin gave me intros, you gave me intros. But like basically you just know that you're gonna fail in the intros because you don't know what you don't know yet. And then
So this
Again,
is probably when we start actually talking to investors.
yeah.
Like very introductory Zoom calls. And we fucked up like a lot of them because we actually had like no idea what we were doing. We didn't even like know who the people we were talking to like were.
Yeah. We didn't know. Turns out there's like actual things you need to know. It's probably normal. People think that, but we didn't yet.
What's some examples?
Well, you need to know like what a difference between different types of rounds are, what different types of term sheets are, that investors give certain types of checks, that they have theses, that like there's a certain process that they have in mind, that they have like expectations on documents that you have. We got to a point where someone was like interested in giving us like I think over $500,000, and they asked for a data room, and they were like, "Yeah, we have a data room." We didn't know it.
We didn't know what it is.
So it's like so many times, and like what I've learned from that is that's the same for like sales or like anything that we're accomplishing. Is like you don't know what you don't know until you go far enough to fail on that thing, and then you learn that next time you get there,
So you just kind of like have to embarrass yourself like 20 times, and then you'll be good.
Yeah.
And so like because I think there's 2 interesting pathways here, which is like I guess what you're mentioning. First is like the scrappiness of selling into a clinic. It's the scrappiness of selling into a clinic, and then also the scrappiness of like raising. I'm conscious of time too. We'll leave time for Q&A. I'll stop talking. But maybe quickly, what's like the scrappiest thing you've done to get into a clinic, or to like sell to them, or to even get on the phone with them? And then what's the scrappiest thing
You
you've
can
done
tell
to
a
raise money?
confidence story.
So initially we started off doing cold calls because that's what everyone says to do, right? Like they're like, "Oh, go hit the calls, like do 100 a day." So we're like, okay, I guess like it's like Instagram Reels tell you to do. Like, I feel like starting a business. So, but then like the thing is, and that did work for a couple of like clinics. We got leads just because like if you call 100 people, like one person is gonna be nice enough to say yes. But like this isn't how like healthcare works generally. Is like you need some degree of credibility, and we used what we had. We said like we're coming out of UChicago and that we won this competition, and we did the typical thing that you do, which is we were just asking for information. We were like, we're young people looking to talk to someone. This is our product, and then we would get another meeting, and then hopefully in that meeting we could convince them to buy it. But we realized like any intro we had that was warm was 1,000 times better. They were like not immediately skeptical or hesitant like they were when we were like calling them cold. We started going to stuff in person, and that's when stuff really really took off. Was when we started going to like networking events or conferences in person, because we talked to people and we just became friends with them, and then they were like they wanted to help us. So we just looked up like behavioral health conference, and there was one in Colorado next month. This was after we raised, and then we just like went without knowing anything. We just like bought tickets, and it was like a 3-day conference, and we spent
the scrappy part of it was our original partner that like had agreed to work with us, the center. The CEO got like a super bad illness and got like replaced, so we didn't have a center to test that anymore, and now like our cold calls were taking too long, and this is probably the near scariest part we've experienced.
So we were like, okay, we just have to drop into Colorado and find someone that
we
can
had
work with
we had
us.
to convince someone in like a day to let us start testing.
So
like we didn't know if the product would work.
Well, with like healthcare stuff, like we wanted to have a test in like the actual field, not just like us testing it in our rooms before we would actually start like doing anything. So we needed a design partner, like a clinic that was like chill enough that they let us like test with their clinicians and like do all the stuff that needed to be done. So we dropped into the conference, and that was our goal. And we just like
I just remember you guys. I just had a flashback of you like convincing that one clinician at the conference that was like trustworthy enough that we were compliant to like test like there.
Like we have HIPAA.
Like
HIPAA is like
turns out HIPAA is like kind of fake, but like also kind of real.
Yeah, it's confusing. It's like a checklist of things that you say yourself that you've done, like that you're like, you know, you have this encryption set up, and you have these like you have like a password on the computer that you have PHI on.
It's completely fake. But like you also have to have it.
But we basically we went to the conference, and then we realized that we just kind of started like being friends with the people there. So the thing we did is we went to the conference, and they had all these tables, and we went to the first table that we saw, and we were like, we just explained the entire situation to them and like try to get their advice on it. And we're like, okay, like can you give us the rundown on like what is up in Colorado, like what's the like hierarchy of like the different clinics, like who should we talk to, like how does a clinic work,
how
like
does sales process work,
yeah,
how could we convince someone in
and then they just like right there like taught us. They're like, okay, so usually the people here are business development people, and then they'll introduce you to a clinical person or a CEO who's then the decision maker. And we had been only talking to clinicians, which is a little bit different. We realized that like there's some differences there, because business development people are the ones that are responsible for bringing back opportunities to their CEO, but clinicians and clinical directors are the people who actually like the product and like would be excited about it enough to go bring it to their CEOs. So we went there, we talked to all the clinicians and some CEOs, and just told the product to everybody. We're super earnest, told them like our journey and like why we were interested in doing what we were doing. We picked like the 3 or 4 that seemed the most excited and the most friendly, and set up contracts there, and 2 of them now we're working with as design partners. So that's why we have that's why we have clinics in like San Francisco and Chicago, which makes sense, but then just like 2 random ones in Colorado, one in Washington technically, maybe from a cold call, if that one pans out.
But the scrappy part is we drove there because we didn't know if we were comfortable.
Like 16 hours.
And then I got like fucking pulled over and nearly arrested on the way back.
Yeah, and then the hotel was pretty bad, and we wanted to go there for just like a day, for one day of the conference, but then we were like, oh, we didn't get the partner yet, so we kept extending our hotel room and living like more and more like shitty.
Hotel for like 2 weeks, only eating the fucking hotel food that they sell.
And like Slim Jims.
That's crazy.
We should tell the story of raising, because that's like probably the most scrappy thing as well. So.
Yeah, well, we'll leave time for Q&A. Maybe a quick like.
We went on. We decided. We basically all decided we were gonna full send. So we like dropped out, burned the ships, went into credit card debt, moved to San Francisco, stared in Airbnb, and tried to take as many investor meetings at as fast a pace as possible. And then once we started telling them we weren't actually raising.
So then once we got the first offer, we got like 2 more offers coming in, because that's just like how it works. And then we picked the one that made the most sense, and the whole process was like 2 weeks, 2 months, depending on when you start.
By the time we actually got to SF, we closed in like a week, but the iteration of like failing took like 3 weeks of once we actually got investor pitches.
Yeah, and this is why everyone goes to SF to raise, and instead of like raising in Chicago. But then it was literally like we didn't even like have a bank account yet, so that we like got an offer and then drove from there to the Chase, because we needed, and we were like, we have a bank, we have a
Offer.
We went to the first chase, and then we just like stood there. No one came to us. We're like, okay, fuck you. We're gonna go to the other one and give them the bonus. And we go to that chase, and they're like, how much money are you expecting into this account? And then we were like, we're gonna have like 400K in it like tomorrow.
We skipped.
And they were like, who the fuck are like, who are you? Like, you're just like 4 kids.
They weren't making us a bank account because they didn't think we were like serious at the first bank. We got kicked out, went to like another one, and then the second we told them we had like real money, he's like, I get a bonus for this.
Yeah,
come.
He was like, I'm gonna go brag to the other people that like they like let you go.
That's crazy. Okay, I want to leave time for questions because I know I had a lot, but I'm sure everyone does too. Does anyone have any Does anyone have any questions for them? Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're doing like cold outreach to clinics and like networking for like the companies that you want to buy your product, was there ever a point where you had to where you felt you needed to wait until the product was built more before reaching out to the clinics, like without risking breaching that relationship without having like anything ready for them?
I think as long as you're honest, the thing we were telling people was, and what we were doing is we were like doing calls to like learn more about the clinics. And then you could say, okay, we're learning more. We are going to have this product out, and it seems like this is a problem that you have. If you're interested, we'll put you on a wait list. And then if you're always honest, you never actually damage the relationship.
Yeah. I think the balance that's hard was getting people to test it as quick as possible without damaging the relationship. But now we figured it. Now we're on like good terms with all of them. But the problem is like we want revenue like now. But like we need the product to be good enough for the same reason, not to like damage the relationship, because like, and a lot of founders are telling us right now like push for revenue, but our investors and like people that I know that have like had successful exits like are telling me that like you have to be patient like in this part where you like get the products good enough and you make sure you have the design partner.
Like basically he was like getting $5,000 from a clinic like now versus like later is not going to be the difference between you succeeding and failing. It's going to be whether your product is good and you have a good relationship with them.
So it's more important to test it than to get revenue.
Which is like tons of founders very much disagree with this when we tell them, because they say if you don't have revenue, how do you know it's real? And that might be a healthcare thing.
And I think it's good to mention this because we know founders that are doing this entirely different than us and succeeding. Like one of our friends is like, I think he makes over 100 cold calls a day right now, and that's like his entire strategy. He just like
Yash?
Yeah, Yash.
It works.
He's like he like wakes up. He goes to his computer and they stay there until the phones are closed across all time zones.
And then he starts working on the code.
And then they start working on like all of the other parts of the startup.
And they have like tens of thousands of dollars in MRR just from because eventually some of the clinics that they're talking to like said yes.
I know he bullied a clinic into saying yes.
Oh yeah, he's like all your competitors are using AI. If you don't, you're gonna
don't use AI, you're gonna fail.
He's like, oh, you don't want us? Like then fail. And it's like I don't want to say that to Recovery Unlimited.
Yeah.
Did you know, like the investor that invested in you, did you know them before you moved to SF? And how was like the investment, like finding you said you got 3 offers? How was that? Did you know the people who gave the offers?
Yeah. So as we failed, we got better. So like we would get in the in-between zone where people were curious, but they probably wanted someone else to make an offer first to like create the FOMO. So like we went back to those after. But for the investor, when I was like becoming like very interested in startups, I like went to a startup conference. Since I'm a veteran, I was like, what's another high leverage network that will help me skip steps? So I've got like into like for free the best like veteran startup tech conference. Not that there's that big of a ceiling there, but the guy running it was the guy we ended up who's like our main investor now. I didn't talk to him while I was there, but it definitely helped when I mentioned I DM'd him. I was like, I've dropped out of UChicago to build something that matters and just sent a Calendly link and a doc with info on it. And then he scheduled on it and he got on the phone and like, yeah, I'm in San Francisco. He's like, I know where you are. He mentioned he had like a workspace. And I called like everyone I knew to try and figure out where his workspace is. Eventually emailed him like, hey, I'm really trying to come to your workspace. And then when I went there, he had like the conversation was very interesting how it unfolded, but basically he made an informal offer within a day. And then we took that informal offer to the accelerator we had like dropped out to go to, and then they gave us an offer, and then we went back to all of our other people that we had.
Which is like the thing everyone tells you, which is like as soon as you have one term sheet, everyone will like come in.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But you have to, I think the thing that I didn't expect is you have to say the right things. Like everyone says that, but the real thing is like, now you have to act like you're gonna go away. Like you're no longer an opportunity for them, and then they're like, wait a second, like someone even offered to fly us out to Tennessee, so it didn't happen. But it was like you go like disinterested, and then you think about it, and then you come back and you tell them, actually, I know your terms, like I understand your value, and this is what I think you could do for us. I know we have other opportunities, but if like we could get here, like I could see it like working really well. So it's still a negotiation. It's not like they're just gonna like hand you money. That's my take at least.
How long did each of like your stages kind of last? Like for like, how long was like working on like the startup was for like the startup pitch versus like actually going out to find your like joint partners and then actually like finding investments?
Within a month after you were gone for summer. We didn't actually start trying until you came back from summer. But 3 weeks after that, or like a week or two after that, we had gone through the pitch with you guys. And they were like, oh, we can make it. So we found like technical people. We found like one of my close childhood friends is like very technical.
Yeah.
So
they're also like
yeah.
underselling themselves. They're insane. Like you guys are insane. They're insane too. They're also developing something similar, right?
Yes, they already had like tech that they were working on and selling it.
And they did like admin tasks for like logistics and trucking companies. They had a business doing that. So like similar kind of problem.
But I'll answer that question as I think 3 weeks from there was like when we started getting intros, basically. So we didn't have a front end yet. We had like maybe a proof of concept that something could work, and we got LOIs from clinics saying if it did work, we would potentially use it. And then that was enough in our crazy confidence for no reason to go down to start applying to every accelerator that exists on the planet until we got into one that was like leverage enough to go to SF. And then like our goal is just like if we just show we're smart enough and like we can do this, that someone will believe in us. Yeah. And I think that was true. So all they want is like proof that like you can do it, and like proof that you're crazy enough to go through with it. And then like
the main thing that it seems like they were looking for was like actual commitment. Like, are you you hear this a lot, like just are you serious about it? Are you doing this full time? Do you actually believe in it, or is this like a side project? And if you do actually believe in it and like do you think it's gonna work, like someone else probably will too. If it's a good idea.
Yeah. Have you done something successful before? Have you some sort of signaling that you're smart, and have you proven that you're like willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish it? Yeah.
I'm curious if you guys talked about indicators that VCs maybe want to look at, especially when you're raising this round. And you also just mentioned you're having some debate about whether to convert like free pilots into paid pilots.
Yeah.
Is that revenue something that you think VCs want to see, or what's going on?
I mean, it depends on the VC.
That's the problem.
I think it's not like the revenue itself. Obviously, it's kind of like what it represents. Yeah. Like, okay, you say you made something good, but if no one's actually paid for it, how do you know? But we also think that if we like explain how we're thinking about it and why we're thinking about it in this way, like they're like to certain VCs, they'll see things the same way as we're seeing them, which is like we're trying to get product market fit. That's the most important thing. The whole point of this pre-seed round and this kind of section of like these few months has been to like validate that the problem that we wanted to solve and the way we wanted to solve it was good, and like all we're doing right now is trying to do that. And once we have that, we think we can be successful if we have more funding, and that's the story that you need to kind of tell VCs.
I think they think about it often in terms of risk factors, and like one is like can this team sell in this like area? Is this product worth enough to pay for? Like, is this team the team to do it? And like every single one of those that you can check off is like a closer step to like where you're trying to get. And revenue is like one of them. So like what we're thinking about is how do we take away as many check boxes of what could go wrong so that like increases our chance of like succeeding.
Could you argue that like maybe retention or usage is better indicator?
Yes,
for sure. And for them, like revenue, some people think of revenue as an indication of that because it's like they're like now invested in it. But we don't want to churn, right? So we don't want to make them pay for something that's not like 100% there.
You're gonna keep them satisfied too, right?
Yeah, our investor pointed out we're like, oh, we're gonna make a sale just to like make a sale. He's like, now you've introduced 6 new questions to me if I'm an investor. It's like, it's like, is that how this happened? And it's like, it's only one sale. And then it's like, B, it's like, how long are they going to stay on for? Is this revenue worth like the contract value? And like, essentially, are you guys being strategic enough? Like all sorts of new questions. And I thought it was very interesting to think about it like that.
I know we're on time. I don't know if you guys are staying for like 5 minutes.
I just stand there. Been a while since I heard my voice.
10 days, 10 days, 10 days.